I am Vero, and this is Modern Immigrant. Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of Modern Immigrant. I am so excited to be here on another Wednesday, bringing you an amazing immigration story. I know the holidays are just around the corner, and I just want to let you know that we have 2 more episodes coming this week. And then we're going to take a short break so we can all chill, relax, but you're going to have amazing content on our website, on our podcast platforms, and also on YouTube. So you can listen to our episodes while you also enjoy the holiday season. Today, we're going to get to know Katerina. I feel such an honor having her in this podcast, getting to know her story. She was born in Ukraine and she grew up in Ukraine until it was the time for her to explore life abroad. She first went to Canada and later moved to the US to complete her medical school career. She's an excellent ophthalmologist today. She works in Orange County here in the US, and she shared what was for her to move from Ukraine to the US. What were some of the cultural shocks that she experienced in Canada first when she was just a teenager, getting to explore another country all by herself and experiencing another completely new culture? She shared amazing knowledge on how has she been able to connect with her patients, especially to those that speak Russian and other immigrant patients, because she gets it. She knows the difficulties that a lot of us immigrants have to go through. It is amazing to see how many professionals today are bringing their own immigration journeys to the work, to the experiences, to what they do, to be able to help and support others. Katerina gave us hope and an amazing inspiration. And I'm happy and I'm honored, as I said before, to have her here on the show. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learn as much as I did. I hope you get to share this with someone if you enjoyed it. Leave us a comment. We love to read your comments. Or also, you can check out our Instagram at Modern Immigrant. Send us a DM. I'm over there checking and chatting with all of you. So thank you so much for being here on another week. So I'm very excited with today's episode. I have Katerina with us, a Modern Immigrant. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Vera, for having me. It's very exciting to be part of your show.
Yeah, this is super exciting. I'm really grateful that I was able to hear about you. And we're going to be talking about a very important conversation. So I can't wait to hear about your story. But that story starts with your immigration and how and when did that start and from where to where?
Yes, I think each one of us who've come to the United States from abroad and born here, we all have individual unique story. And that's what all makes us special, our own story and what the roots of the story in our journey. So my journey started when I was very little, very young. I was born and raised in what was then Soviet Union and now Ukraine. And one of our family stories was that my great grandmother always wanted to move to the United States. So at the turn of the 20th century, the United States had open immigration policy. The country was growing, they were building railroads, skyscrapers were going up. It was a booming economy, largest expansion on the planet at that time. So they needed people, they needed resources to build all of that. And the Europeans were recruited heavily. My grandmother really wanted to move, but unfortunately she was illiterate. At the turn of the century, 100 years ago, only 20% of people knew how to write and read in the Russian Empire. So that was, education was the stumbling block for them. And that was the story that I grew up with, that, my ancestors really wanted to go to that promised land of America. And since I was about 5, I kind of knew, well, you know what, maybe I get to fulfill that dream. And I started learning English, here and there little words. And my parents placed me in a school that had, it's like a charter school, I would call it. There was a entrance competition and you had to score high to get in. So I was able to land my spot, and I studied English since I was 7. Every day, every hour, I would have a class and I would have little headphones and one of those tapes that are now obsolete. We would listen to recordings of English language because this was Cold War, so we had no access to news or uh, written, printed type in English, nothing. We only had just the textbook and the tape. And that's how my journey started, just with the family dream, passed on through generations. And as I grew up, I learned more English, met more people. As Soviet Union fell apart, more tourism entered Ukraine, and I kind of got to know people from Canada and United States, and that really spearheaded and facilitated my journey to move later on.
That is just so amazing. I truly appreciate that you started by sharing your family's dream and desire to migrate, because I feel like that's truly where a lot of our immigration journeys have started, right? Maybe it was someone we knew, maybe it was our family, maybe it was a dream that they couldn't have, like in your case. And that's always in the back of our mind, kind of, until we can materialize it like you did.
Absolutely. And that's what I was saying. I feel everybody has a talent, and we are all planted with seeds and ideas for our family as an immediate surroundings. That's like our first introduction to the world. And the plants, the seeds that are planted in us, they get to sprout, and we get to realize the fruits of that.
It's so pretty. I think that's really beautiful. And when you finally, like, you were working towards that dream kind of coming to the US, perfecting your English, you were preparing also to live in Ukraine. Like, you were forming yourself as a doctor. Is that true? So how was that? When did you started to see the dream to come into the US to be real, and how were you also progressing in Ukraine with your life? Because I feel like that's like a difficult balance, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
leave, but I'm be here now.
Very much on point. So I was fortunate to be able to leave when I was about 16, very young in my adult life development, just really a teenager, according to
Mhm.
modern standards, just a kid. But when you grow up abroad under different circumstances, and there's political turmoil, economic instability, you really had to grow up fast and kind of make decisions quickly, and um, make plans under circumstances that are probably beyond the normal routine. And I feel like I had to grow up a little bit sooner than the rest of us, and I knew that I wanted to pursue my dreams and under more stable circumstances where I would have the most opportunity available for me. And in early 90s, Ukraine was just a fledgling country. It was just developing its economy, figuring out what currency they were using. I mean, literally, I would wake up, we had one type of money, currency, and then a few months later, it's a different type of money. It's like playing Monopoly. It was extremely unstable. And as a teenager, you're kind of growing up in this unstable world. You feel like you're in an earthquake zone. You're constantly evacuating. So I kind of made up my mind that, I got to find a solid ground for my future. And I was working hard and was selected to be an exchange student when I was only 14 to go to the United States. But that fell through because I was kind of like a backup candidate. So everybody who was selected as a finalist got to go. In retrospect, I think it was good. I was quite young as a 14-year-old to leave home, but it really just gave me the taste of like, what if I had a chance to go and live in the United States for 1 year as an exchange student. So I worked really hard and continued to study, got exceptional grades, kind of like valedictorian of my high school. And by the time I was reaching the last year of high school, I took all the entrance tests to American and Canadian colleges. So I basically put myself in position of a U.S. graduating high school senior. I said, look, I'm going to be just like an American kid, and I'm going to apply to United States colleges just like an American kid. So I took the SAT, the test of English as a foreign language. At that time was known as TOEFL. That was a requirement for most students. It's obsolete now, but and I was in the first wave too back in 1994. That was like the very first testing facility that was open in Ukraine. So there was a lot of firsts for me personally, and there was a lot of firsts for the country because it was just growing. So in a way, like Ukraine and my journey as a country, as an individual, we're all kind of developing at the same time, but I chose to diverge and kind of find a little bit solid ground abroad. And I was fortunate to get accepted to multiple schools, but I chose Canada for my undergraduate education, where I pursued biology and chemistry.
And how old were you at that time when you got in the Canada university?
Yeah. So I was 16 years old, and I remember like yesterday, I got on that plane. It was my very first plane ride. I was never at an airport before. So everything was just kind of surreal. I was all by myself. I had to say goodbye to my mom going up the escalator. She was in tears, of course, but I was kind of smiling because I wasn't sad at all. I was really looking forward to embracing this new adventure and going off on my own and looking to this new life.
That's amazing. It's really interesting how I feel like a lot of immigrants, we really remember that moment at the airport. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like we can feel those emotions and that excitement that you're talking about. It's like so many things that are about to happen and we have no idea how it's going to look like. How was in a way, I know it's probably like so many experiences and so many things that you were maybe shocked with or surprised when you arrived to Canada, but what was a little bit of that, yeah, life when you arrived? How different it was from Ukraine?
That's a great question because you have to rewind to 1995, completely different environment even for us. Now think of cell phones, iPhones, like none of that existed.
Right.
Very much basic yellow book pages, difficulty communicating with people. Phone calls were expensive. So once I landed, I was kind of cut off from my family because it was like $1.50 to per minute to call my family in Ukraine. So imagine 16-year-old cut off from your family and you just kind of need to sink or swim and adjust and find your new footing in the new country with people who were kind enough to host me. There was a nice family from one of the students who was teaching English in Canada the year before who decided to host me that year before I started school around Vancouver area. So they were very kind. And that's one thing I would say, that as an immigrant, you always want to keep your mind open to meeting new people, trusting people here. I feel people in America and Canada are very kind. They're ready to help you. They respect the fact that you left your life and you're willing to come all the way here to dive into new language, new culture, new rules, new laws, and give it your very best and commit your whole life, the best years of your life, to this new culture, society, and new country. So I think a lot of people see that. They see that drive, that energy, and they want to help you. It's kind of like a natural magnetic appeal.
And we don't always feel, I don't know how it was for you, but like when I came from Venezuela, like I felt that trusting piece was really hard for me because we don't trust everyone back there, or we don't. Yeah, there's like also like terrible stories, and you know what I mean. So like when it's a hard. I'm really glad that you're talking about trusting and opening, because I think it's difficult sometimes in our own countries to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I think majority of people underestimate, the blessings that we have here in America, that the peace and the comfortable life that we can have, the safety of communities that we have, because most people that come from abroad do not come from those type of communities. You can't leave your door unlocked or your car unlocked. It could be tires taken off your car in the morning.
Yeah.
All kinds of terrible things that you wouldn't even think of here. So people here take it for granted. But so we come with a little bit of that trauma at the back of our mind. We're kind of always in that fight or flight mode a bit. So I think some of it is when you come here, you sort of get enveloped by this love of the community and people who are willing to accept you, and they heal you in a way, because there's a lot of kindness in people here. It takes time. It's not immediate. It's not instant. But I guess part of my story sharing being here is to call for people to stay open-minded and to ask for help and to share their story. People love hearing stories. Individual stories is what drives us. Stories make people move, open up their hearts, and sometimes their wallets. Like when I was a student, I needed help with partially paying my tuition and accommodation, room and board. And I worked hard. I worked on campus. I worked during the summer. and I studied, and then it wasn't enough. So there were still people kind enough who saw that, this is a young person who has a drive and commitment, and she's got a whole life ahead of her. And, I would like to help her, and people did help me financially. And I'm forever grateful for that. And I still stay in touch with those people. And, we're friends forever. I'm grateful for those connections and for the communities.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think we do need to start to open up a little bit more about the struggles that we're facing, even like, if not to like necessarily like find someone that would help, but we're going to find people that can understand and can relate. And, sometimes we just want to keep it to ourselves and don't share the struggles. And I feel like we need so much more of that, because somebody might be, listening to your story and the success piece that we're going to talk about, and then immediately think, wow, she did it all by herself, right? She didn't have struggles. And I like hearing the honest, the back, kind of like the behind the scenes story.
Yes, it takes a village to raise a child. It never gets old. It's just, and the other thing I really like is luck favors the prepared mind. So just be prepared for opportunities to open up. Don't despair. I know sometimes it seems like all the doors are closed and all of a sudden a window opens up. Just be patient. Remember your goals. Remember why you're here. Remember your true north, and things will work out. And I think staying positive, staying kind, that light within you will shine. And like I said, it will attract the right people. It will attract the right circumstances.
The right opportunities, for sure.
Yes.
How was that life in Canada? For how long were you there? And what were you studying? If you can remind us again at that first undergrad.
So I studied biology and chemistry as a minor. And that turned out to be a great foundation for a career in medicine. And as a first-year student, I happened to really excel in those courses. So I got noticed by a medical school in California, Loma Linda University. So they recruited me to come for the summer to explore career in medicine and dentistry. It was kind of like a fun, sponsored scholarship where I got to fly to California, tour Loma Linda University, meet some professors, sit in classes, do some lab work, meet a lot of surgeons and doctors, and some of the students that are currently there. And I really kind of made up my mind after that trip that I think a career in medicine is, for me, I really feel it's a calling, and it reaches out to my heart. I want to help people. If I have a gift of, memorizing facts and putting things together in analytical fashion and connect with people, when I speak to them, I'd like to give back, like each one of us has a talent. So I think our job on this planet is to develop it to the fullest of their ability and to give back to this world, right? So I felt like that was my calling. So after that summer, I continued on with my college education, got a few more scholarships to do research, and eventually got accepted to Loma Linda University Medical School in California.
Amazing.
So I lived in Canada for 4 years, and it's a beautiful country to this day. I consider it my second home. I love the Western Rockies, Banff, Lake Louise area. Fantastic skiing, hiking opportunities.
Yeah.
So if anybody gets a chance to go, that's one of the gems on this planet.
That is awesome. And how was that transition to California? I'm sure it was different culturally, and just like so I guess you were at a different level too, entering your profession.
It's true. I would say if you were to discuss the whole concept of culture shock, I would say culture shock was definitely a major point in my life when I moved from Ukraine to Canada, because I was astounded. I've never seen an electrical moving door in a store that opens in and out. It startled me. Those dispensers for the soap and the hand dryers, and a lot of little things that we see, like basic necessities that we take for granted.
Even back then, because I feel like now they will surprise me still. So like, that's how you know.
I think definitely in the 90s, there was a huge gap. I really felt like I was propelled from the moon, and finally I've arrived on Earth. Like I've been on a satellite colony somewhere before. It was a huge culture shock. And it took me a while also to understand spoken English, even though I studied English since I was little. It was very frustrating because I really wanted to understand what people on the radio were saying, and I couldn't for like 3 months. So that was a huge culture shock. But as far as transitioning from Canada to the United States, it wasn't that much of an adjustment. I would say United States is definitely more diverse, and that's what struck me, especially Southern California, where I studied and I currently live. We're so close to the Mexican border. There's a huge influence of Mexican culture, Spanish language, Spanish speakers. So that was an adjustment for me, especially as I studied medicine. We were always talking about how does medicine affect people of different socioeconomic backgrounds, different ethnicities, because for the longest time, medical textbooks were written from the standpoint of a European, white man. And all of a sudden we realize, well, that's not our world anymore. We have all these people from different countries living here, and we have a lot of women and children. And we need to understand how this melting pot is best treated. So that eventually made its way into medical textbooks and conversations in the classroom. Diversity was starting even back then.
That is interesting. And it's interesting also with your own experience as an immigrant and moving from one country to another. I wonder how that influences the work you do as a doctor, because I feel like you already bring a different perspective into the practice, because you can understand how, maybe for a client, for a patient, what you're proposing or what you're explaining in the medical terms can be so different from what they do in their home country, or even technical words that they can't understand. Like, I'm sure you have that empathy to tell us a little bit more of that.
That's a great point. And I think that's why medical schools across the country are making an emphasis on taking on applicants that are immigrants or from immigrant families, because they realize that people with similar backgrounds need to understand and connect with the wider population better. If you come from a privileged upbringing and you had a smooth sailing, and then you become a doctor, it would be difficult for you to emphasize and understand what's going on unless you really put yourself into position of like medical mission trips, or you make community service as your priority. So I'm excited to see that a lot of immigrants are included in the application pool year by year, and especially a lot of women. The class of 2003 from my medical school was almost 50% women, 50% men, which I think is very important to understand how health care is different for women versus men, to have more leverage for women's voices. But in terms of me seeing an immigrant in my clinic, of course, I have to slow down, number one, then kind of see how long have they been here, have they lived abroad. If they're freshly arrived, then I will have to take more time to explain things for sure. If they've lived here for a while, they're a little bit more adjusted and they're more connected. They're more fluent in English. We can go back and forth in different language. But I speak some Spanish and some Portuguese, but of course, Russian is my native language. So I definitely make it a priority to advertise in the Russian-speaking community, because I feel for all those people who just recently arrived, they want to be able to have access to healthcare, and they want to feel comfortable talking to their doctor. Because when that language barrier exists, it's very difficult for people to feel like they just got care. They just feel like, oh, I walked in, I paid, I got a piece of paper. They want to connect with the doctor. And I think that's part of my priority, is to make a connection during a visit. And I try to remember how it was for me when I came over and how people treated me, and just try to, capitalize on my personal experiences.
Right. Especially in such a delicate moment when you're at a doctor, right? Like you're probably dealing with some symptoms, or you don't feel well. So you want to, using your first language is always like literally the best. You feel somehow at home and understood. And you mentioned recently, right now you talk about like, there are also more people probably arriving to the clinic, or also more people from Ukraine arriving to the USA. I'm sure you have seen that. And I just kind of like, aside from the interview, want to ask how's your family and people that you know in Ukraine, because I know things have been really, really terrible there.
Yeah, this year has turned out to be very challenging for millions of people around the world, specifically Ukrainians. Of course, I lost a lot of sleep, like most of my friends and family, when the events first unfolded. And my goal was to help families with children, because I feel like children have to have an opportunity for a peaceful childhood. And my family and I worked very hard to bring a couple of my cousins with their kids over. So one of them was able to come through humanitarian corridor in Tijuana, Mexico, that was open in April. And she came in with her husband and a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they stayed with us for a week. We helped them adjust a little bit and send them over to Miami, where my other cousin has lived all this time. And the other family has 3 girls, a 6-year-old twins and a 9-year-old daughter. And they also have an older mother-in-law. So a large family, and we helped them get their residency in Canada.
Okay.
Again, I still have some connection to Canada, and we were able to find support, and a Rotary Club has stepped up and helping with some accommodations. So again, that sense of community, it continues to live on. I think people are inherently good and kind, despite of what we see in the world, like the wars and the economy and recession and greed. I feel like love and kindness does win. And these stories that I've experienced myself firsthand really make me believe in humanity.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for leaving that message here, because I do feel like people are stressed out, are scared, especially immigrants have been impacted in so many different levels. And just hearing that from your own perspective and from your own experience gives us hope for sure. So I appreciate that. So I'm curious to know, how have you been able to keep in contact with your family and people back home? Because I know you said when you came here, it was really hard to keep, stay connected and talk, and there was no cell phones. Is there anything that you feel like it helped you back then, or that it continues to help you?
Yes. So early on, I think that complete disconnect actually helped me with immersion, which was important when I was younger, to really dive in and commit myself to 100% immersion and commitment to this culture and language. So it was a rough landing, but I think it was good in retrospect, and challenges. What doesn't kill us make us stronger. Right?
That's true.
This challenge I was up for that. But, with development of technology, we have these apps, WhatsApp, Viber, even basic email.
True.
You can text on certain plans. So I don't feel lack of communication at all. We do communicate as, we have time available. But I think overall right now, it's difficult to talk to people who are still in Ukraine, because they are traumatized and they're constantly living on edge. So I just do kind of monthly checks, are you okay? Do you need help? Do you need anything? Because the ones that chose to stay there, they kind of day by day they face it, and I just don't want to. I want to help them. I don't want to, slow down their resolve.
That is really interesting, because from your perspective, being here, you're alarmed to see everything that they're going through, and sometimes for people that are still living in that moment, they're like, hey, this is normal to me in a way, right? So it's a really hard balance. I experienced that too with my family back home. Are you all okay? How can I help? In that constant texting, sometimes it wasn't all positive, right? Because they were like,
exactly,
oh, it's all perfect over there in the US and we are bad. It's not like that. And I was like, no, I'm not trying to say that. But I just feel like when you see it from the outside, it's so different from what you're in there.
I think we need to respect each other's choices. And, as an immigrant, you made a choice to come here, and that is your journey. And I embrace that journey. I love this country. And I think everyone who came here is a special person. They have that resolve and persuasion. They're unstoppable, really. It's a special breed of people. But at the same time, it makes it distinct from the people who didn't come and they chose to stay in their environment. And I think I've come to peace with that. Initially I wanted everybody to come and join me and live here happily ever after. But I've come to respect their choices. And I think People are happy in their element and with their choices. If you bring someone here by force, they're just not going to be as excited. You want to want it, you want to earn it, you want to feel like this is special. And in the same way, I just learned to respect the choices of people that stayed behind, and I just want to
Mm,
support them and show them love.
I really like that. I really appreciate that too. There was a topic that I feel like as immigrants we talk a lot about moving abroad when you already have a degree, when you already have a profession, and then making the transition in another country. And for a lot of people, like for example myself, I had to like change my whole profession. Like I had to go back to school and study something else because I didn't want to like restudy the same um field. But I really want to use the opportunity that you're here with us today as a doctor to kind of speak to those immigrants that might be, yeah, either feeling like, well, I'm already a doctor, why would I move abroad? Or I'm already a doctor, how can I be a doctor in the US? And I know you might not have like all of the answers for these scenarios, but I do want to hear kind of like what would you tell them based on your own experience?
So I was fortunate enough to get basically American education from the get-go, from A to Z. I don't have a foreign degree,
Yeah.
but I do have a lot of friends who I went to school with back in high school in Ukraine, and they happened to move here later on after they had a full career, like let's say 10, 15 years in medicine in Russia or Ukraine, and they
Yeah.
got an opportunity to move here and they had to start from scratch. So I've witnessed many scenarios.
Okay.
And I would say that, again, you have to respect people's choices. And as long as you know your true north, what you want and what you're capable of, you should pursue that. So if you want to continue to be the physician that you are and you have been and you've enjoyed that career and you want to recapture that here, it's just going to take a lot of resilience and humility in a way, because you do have to take a step back, retake the examinations. It takes 3 to 5 years. I just had a friend who went through that process successfully, and I'm very proud of her achievement. And then you have to go through the matching process where you get a residency position. And residency position is essentially you starting from scratch in your training under senior doctors. And sometimes, as a foreign graduate, you are most senior by age, but on a hierarchy of professional training, you're supposed to be like most junior. So there's a
Right.
lot of conflict, perhaps, if you're, proud person. But I
Or
think,
if or even if you're senior by profession in your country. But
right,
here is different.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You just have to say, look, my dream is to become a doctor licensed to be able to practice here in the United States. And just remember keep your eyes on the goal. And it's all temporary. The training process, residency, internship is 1 year, residency is 3 to 4 years. And eventually you will become your licensed physician in the state of your choice and you can practice. Now, if somebody doesn't necessarily want to commit that time for whatever reason, they have children, family, parents to take care of, people have different commitments, and I
Yeah.
completely respect that. And if they still want to continue in healthcare and their goal is to reach to the community, I would probably just focus on perhaps studying something else like a physician assistant or a nursing program. A lot of nurses have acquired independent practice rights in many states, which
Yeah.
essentially gives you freedom to practice medicine, usually in cooperation with a senior physician nearby. But really, if your goal is to continue to practice medicine, you can do so in a position of a RN.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit shorter time and doesn't require as much investment. And I know people also who have completely abandoned medicine and they went to do real estate and they've become
Yeah.
very successful. And there's no shame in that. I think frequently with this big transition from country to country, different culture, language barrier, people sometimes reassess their values, and for some of them it comes in their midlife. And at any point people can have midlife value reassessment and they
Mhm.
see, well, what's important? Do I really want to continue to do this? Or this is my chance perhaps to try something else, to try my hand something else. The majority of people who have become physicians in their home country are intelligent
Mm.
people, they're hardworking. So I think if they put their mind to anything, they'll succeed.
Yeah. I like that idea of like seeing your immigration journey as an opportunity to assess your life, assess what you want to continue to do. And if the answer, as you said, is yes, this is what I want to do, even if it takes more time, then that's also like where your calling is. It's like a great way to like confirm you're on the right path versus let's try something else. And I think that's also a great opportunity. So I appreciate that point of view, and I appreciate that you're really realistic and positive in a way, because I feel like sometimes people are just like, this is so impossible, like it's just going to take so long, and for the person listening can be discouraging sometimes. So I appreciate your point of view.
Absolutely. And I've known people who have retaken the same examination. It's called USMLE, step one, steps two, steps three, 7 times, you know. And, those are the people that were determined. And it would take them like 10 years overall to pass all the exams and go through the training. But guess what? They achieved their dream to become a physician and practice here. And many years down the road, they're happy. They have the life that they wanted and they're fulfilled.
Mm.
So I think, sometimes you can have a nearsighted view where you're just kind of looking at things in front of you immediately, or you can have a long-term view where you look in the horizon. So it's important not to forget to see the forest for the trees. You want to see what is your bigger goal and like how you're going to achieve it and your journey there. And it doesn't have to be a linear journey. It doesn't have to be from A to Z. Sometimes, the road can be like a serpent, it can curve and wave and take you to unexpected places, exposed to people you haven't thought you'll meet. And I think that's part of your journey, and just be open to opportunities and learn from every experience.
I love that so much. Thank you. And giving us ourselves that opportunity to really understand that and really accept that our journeys are all going to be different. I think that's really pretty. Katerina, have you been able to go back to Ukraine?
I actually have not been to Ukraine for a long time. I have to admit, we were planning to go in April of 2020, had tickets in hand and all.
Oh,
So COVID put a stop to that. Everything was canceled, and then just after that, it never came to fruition. But like I said, I've had all these cousins who recently moved, so all of a sudden, I feel Ukraine came to me.
yes. I'm sure that you are like just seeing family. I'm sure it makes you feel home. And how do you keep like just to like as we're ending the interview, I always like to explore this with other immigrants, which is how do you continue to stay kind of connected to your roots or your country? Sometimes it's through food, sometimes it's family or language. Like, are you able to even speak Russian? How?
Yeah, so both of my children were born here. I have a boy and a girl, and they're 10 and 12, and they are fluent. They can read, write, and speak Russian. And that's an effort from, myself and my parents that spent many summers with them.
Yes.
And our local community school, on weekends, we have a language school, Russian School of Orange County. And that has been a major draw for the last 17 years. And many children have come here and grew up fluent, even though they grew up abroad. And that's a lot of grassroots effort from our women that came here and wanted to continue sort of passing on the cultural traditions, the language, the songs, the fairy tales. It's a lot of effort from just regular women who just said, look, we're going to do this for our community. They came together, they organized the school, and I'm very grateful for those opportunities. And of course, with the expansion of social media platforms, we have Facebook groups, and we have connections through there. People, again, reach out, they try to help each other out. They focus on like giving books to little kids as their own children grow up, and form events where they have music or performances, sometimes festivals. So that's a major point. Just staying connected with the community, whichever community you came from. I think in the United States, we're fortunate enough. There's so many people. There's going to be your own community here in some shape or form. So just try to find it if you're really feeling nostalgic.
Yes.
I think just find your way there and connect. The people are just like you, and they want to have a sense of community and identity. And I think it's therapeutic for all of us to connect with each other.
It's so, so important. And it really helps you, yeah, kind of like continue to move forward, continue to adapt while you're still maybe like talking to someone that's going through something similar that can understand your nostalgic, feeling or sadness or homesickness. So I really think that's beautiful. And I'm glad to hear that you have been able to be part of that community and recreate it in a way. So I truly appreciate you sharing your story. And I always like to ask if there's any other message. You have given us so many amazing learnings and messages, but I want to give you the opportunity to say a final message to the immigrants that are listening. Maybe sometimes we have non-immigrants that like to explore other people's stories. So yeah, any final message that you want to leave us with, Katerina?
I really like the movie with Will Smith, The Pursuit of Happiness. It's a story of non-immigrants, somebody who grew up here in America and had to rise, from a low socioeconomic class up to a comfortable life that he set up for his kids. And
Yeah.
in that movie, he talks about the Declaration of Independence and the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And I just kind of remember that movie and that crux statement. Remember that this is the country where this is still possible. This is kind of the beacon of freedom. No matter what is going around us, the political turmoil, fake news, this and that, this is kind of all white noise. You got to have faith, that every 4th of July when we get together and celebrate the independence of this beautiful country, it's the people that make the country. And I feel like that's the fiber, the river of life that makes this country move forward. And like I said, the kindness and the open heart of the people will continue to thrive, make this country thrive. And just another message about personal journeys: remember your true north. Whatever it is, you may reassess what it is as years go by and you find yourself on a different land and different ground amongst different crowd, different tribe. But remember, make it well known for you. Define it. What is it that your true north is, and never give up pursuing it. I think you should continue on in your journey. You can take breaks, you can take pauses, but keep moving forward.
Don't give up. That's so pretty, Katerina. Thank you. It really touches my heart. And I'm really lucky to have been able to meet you over Zoom. So virtually meeting you and have you on the show. I really, really appreciate you opening up about your experience, what had helped you. Thank you for leaving us with hope and positivity. I truly appreciate it.
It was very nice to meet you, and I'm glad that I was able to share my message. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, you too.